Hey guys, all I have to say is Rich Rocket. He is the person I interviewed this month, and I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did filming it with him in his home. Loved it. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know your thoughts and stay tuned to Color Coded Style. All right. Hey everyone, this is Crystal from Color Coded Style, and I am here with Rich Rocket today. And we are talking about all that Rich does, and let's just jump into it.
All right.
Thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you for being here.
I appreciate it.
Am I home?
Yes. So, you're multidisciplined artist, talent,
Thank you.
from podcast to your clothing line to being a host, etc. How did you pull all these different aspects out of you?
They kind of came out of like a necessity for one another.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Okay.
when I first graduated from high school
Mm-hmm.
and went to college, I was like, I don't know like what I want to do,
Yeah.
but I know I want to do something like different.
Mhm.
Like everybody's like, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer, I'm going to be this. And I'm
Right.
like, that all sounds great, but I don't know if any of that is like me.
Right.
And so I started like getting involved in all these different like clubs and organizations on campus.
Yeah.
And I joined the Black Student Union.
Mm-hmm.
And the organizer was like, we need to do these events and
Yeah.
like fundraisers. And so I started like getting involved in like planning the events. And I was like, I kind of like this.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we actually would have the events, they were like, oh, we need somebody to like host the events. And I'm
Right.
like, okay. And then I started doing that. And I kind of like that. And then like when we were planning the events, we needed a flyer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, I can try to make a flyer. And
Right.
so it just,
Right.
all of the things kind of like melded together. And
Yeah.
it was like, okay, I feel like these are the things that I feel passionate about.
Right.
I like doing these
Right.
things. And then I eventually
Yeah.
was like, how do I make money?
Right.
Doing the things that make me feel good.
Right,
You know?
right. And what did you start with first in terms of the money making venture, and how did you move?
Financially, it
everything
started
into
with graphic design.
Okay. Okay.
So I had a 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been at this particular company for like 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I was killing it. I thought,
Yeah,
anyway. I was like, we had like 3 different offices. I had
Mhm.
keys to all the offices. I had rapport with all the doctors. I
Mhm.
was like, I'm really like
Mm-hmm.
doing my thing. And I remember sitting down with my manager, and I was like, I'm not saying like I need a promotion or anything, but
Right.
I'm like, I've been kind of killing it. So like, what's next? What's the
Right.
next step? What can
Right.
I look forward to? What should I be aspiring to?
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she was like, the only other job you can have here is my job.
Oh.
And I'm not going to let you take my job.
Oh.
And I was
Okay.
like, what a turn.
Wow.
I thought this was going to be a cute little lunch, but
Wow.
it turned into something very serious.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I was like, after that, I was like, well, why am I working so hard? Like,
Yeah,
it's really no
yeah.
point in me putting all this effort and energy into
Right.
this every day when, like, it's just going to be this a year, 2 years from now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of just, I didn't like, completely just tune out.
Right.
But I was like, I'm not going to be busting my hump.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
And was it for a creative place?
No,
It was, right.
it was
sounds
for
it's
like
for
a psychology
Got you.
team,
Okay.
associates kind of thing.
Okay.
So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna just do what everybody else is doing,
Right.
which is like enough,
Right. Right.
And so a few people, this was so weird. A few people from the company had like added me on Facebook, and at the time I didn't think anything of it.
Right.
But I was still very much like doing events,
Mhm,
doing everything
mhm,
outside of work.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember one particular day they asked me to come to another office to close that office because somebody had went home sick or something. And I was like, oh, sure.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got there and I'm like, closing everything out, I realized I didn't have my key for that office.
Yeah.
So I went down the whole call list, called all the doctors, called HR, called everybody. Like,
Right.
can somebody please come and like cover me so I can, or bring a key
Right.
so that I can like lock up
Get
and
it.
leave.
Right. Right.
And nobody answered the phone.
Wow.
And I
Okay.
waited maybe like 2 hours there after closing just to see if somebody would call back or whatever. Nothing. So I ended up leaving.
Okay.
And the office was a suite inside of an office building. So
Right.
it's not like somebody could just walk in. You had to first get in the building,
Right.
then get upstairs, get into the suite.
Yeah.
But I left it unlocked. Went home, and the next day I went into the office I was supposed to go into,
Mhm.
and everybody was like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I'm at work. What are y'all doing? Like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the issue?
Right.
What's going on? And I remember sitting down at my desk, and I was like, I think I'm getting fired. Because I was like, everybody was acting so strange.
Okay.
And so when the human resource lady came around the corner, she was like, "Hey, once you get settled, why don't you come in and talk to me for a minute?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay." So as I'm like packing my desk up,
Right.
taking the keys off my key ring, I'm like, "Yeah, I'm getting fired today."
Right.
So I walked, and this also was the first time I had ever been fired from a job, like ever.
Yeah.
So I go into her office, and she's like, first she turns her computer screen to me, and she was like, "What is this?" And it was like a flyer from an event that I did like 2 nights ago. And I was like, "It's a flyer.
Right.
I mean, what?" And she was like, "Well, we just noticed the difference in your performance here." And I was like, "And you think it has something to do with that?" And she was like, "Well, we would assume." And I'm like, "But what does that have to do with anything? This literally starts when I leave here. It has nothing to do with here.
Right.
It's not like something that
interest.
right.
Yeah.
Like it's not nothing that would be alarming to
Right.
anyone. It was an open mic." So I was like, "Okay." So she was like, "Yeah." And then after the incident yesterday, the partners have decided that they want to let you go. And I was like, wow, okay.
Wow.
And so, I left my keys on the desk, walked out, and I went home, and I had just moved into a new apartment, just bought a car.
Wow.
Had all these like big boy bills.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, what am I going to do?
Right.
So I sat there for like 2 days, just kind of like in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I can go back on the, trail, start interviewing, fill out application again. Or I can say, I'm good at these things.
Yeah.
How can I make those things make money?
Right.
So I literally just made a flyer that said, I make flyers. And it was like $25 a flyer.
Yeah.
I posted it on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
By the end, that was in, I want to say the end of January when that happened.
And what year was this?
This was 2012.
Okay.
So it was the end of January 2012.
Yeah.
By the end of February that next month, I had made enough money to pay my rent.
Wow.
So I was like hustling, like crazy.
Wow.
And I mean, people were like, "Oh, you're a graphic designer?" I'm like, "Yeah." Sure. They're like, "You know how to make a logo?" I'm like, "Yeah." How do you make logos?
But you had kind of done it. You had already been doing it.
I had like the fundamentals down, so I knew how to. And I had, I've always had like an aesthetic.
Yeah.
That people appreciated. So I was like, if I can just find a way to turn this into whatever people need, I'm gonna be okay.
And how many? So you had a good following, though. You must have had a good following on Facebook and
at the time, yeah.
Because was
Instagram was around, but it was nothing like what it is now.
Right.
Facebook like then it was just like pictures of food and weird filters, and then we were just vibing out. It was that.
Right. Yeah. So you had that. That's how you started. Okay. So where did you go? Where did you go next? When did the hosting and all?
So the hosting had always been there.
That's right.
When I was in college, we were doing the things in there. But I had, and then that moved into me finding a venue and hosting my own open mic, which I was like a show that I produced and hosted for about 4 or 5 years. Yeah. Which I did simultaneously with working and everything else. Yeah. And then the photography came in probably. While I was doing the show, because I would always be in front of the camera for different things, and a lot of times I'd be in front of the camera and I'd be like, okay, I know how I felt in front of the camera, but that's not how I looked. You know what I mean? So I was like, I need to figure out how to connect those two, like the feeling to what it is. So I spent some time behind the camera, like learning, like just like how to scope, you know what I mean, to make the two meet. Okay. And I came up with this idea called the 31 Looks, where I worked, like I just reached out to hundreds of people on like Instagram, Facebook, wherever, like different types of creative people, like stylists, makeup artists, other photographers, creative directors, and I just was like, I want to come up with like 31 different concepts. I want to work with everybody. We'll create these concepts, and then every day from January 1st to the 31st, I'll release a new one on social media and on my website with a little like write up about how it came to be. And that was how I kind of like taught myself photography, because I was like, I'm gonna work with all these different people, give me like chances to work with different skin tones and building sets, and like it was like a crash course, if you will, and like how to build all this. So I did that for 2 months, and then we released everything that January. Okay. So that's the photography, and then the clothing company didn't come till like 2007, 2018. Okay. Yeah. Okay. It was like much further down the line.
Yeah, and so in terms of the photography, are you still in touch with the people that you did that?
Some of them, yeah.
Some of them, yeah.
Some people, yeah.
And how did you get people to buy into it? Because you're reaching out to some people that you probably didn't know.
Yeah.
How did you get them to participate?
I think a lot of people were just sold on like the vision. They were like, this is something we haven't seen before. Right. Nobody's really doing anything like this. So a lot of people were just like, I want to be just a part of it. Right. You know what I mean? Like it was because it was a new idea. Yeah. Nobody really. And I haven't honestly seen anyone do anything like it since. I haven't heard of that either. Yeah. That's an amazing. I don't even remember where the idea came from. I think I was just sitting here. I was like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then it just came together. Right. But yeah, I haven't really seen, and I think it was a merge of a few different ideas. So I used to work with the DMV Network, which is a big Instagram platform. And they do like news and stuff like that. And I used to do correspondence for them. And we worked together and did a 30 under 30 list. Yes. And I think that idea paired with the photography idea was how the 31 Concepts was born. Got it.
Okay. And so your clothing line came out later. Talk about its origins and there's some pieces here that I'm looking at. Like how did you? Just talk about the origins. So
I've always been very heavily inspired by 80s and 90s pop culture, music, movies, all of it. I have a wealth of like unnecessary, useless knowledge on the subject.
As an 80s baby, like I was born in 1980. I get it. I love it too.
The other day, I literally was at a pop up, and I have a jacket that has Shayna from Jim and the Holograms on the back. Everybody's like, well, she's so pretty, and they're like, I'm like, well, do you know who that is? Right. And people are like, no. And then I'm like, oh, it's Shayna from Jim and the Holograms, and they're like, okay.
Do you know how big that show was for me?
Yeah, for so many people.
We would watch it I think it came on in the morning. We would watch it before we went to school. Yeah. Like religiously.
And it was like, it was such a big, the Holograms were so impactful to culture. Yeah. Because they were the anti-Barbie.
Yes.
You know what I mean? When Barbie was really like the corner of the market.
Barbie
like Jim was like,
Jim.
No, we're the, and then of course,
cool.
Right, and then inside of Jim and the Holograms, you had the Misfits, who were the anti-Barbie. Yes. So like they had so much cultural impact, and I rewatched the cartoon all the time.
I haven't watched it. You reminded me. You reminded me, Rich.
You can watch it on YouTube.
I need to watch it. Yes.
And rewatching it, specifically Shayna was like one of the characters who they didn't give that much to, but when they did, it was so like, what's going on? like they would be on a boat and the boat would be like sinking, right? And then they'd be all like in turmoil. And Shayna would be like, "It's okay because we're wearing killer outfits." Right. Like, Shayna, girl, what are you talking about? Like, we are going to drown. Right. But I love, and she was such a cornerstone in the group. Yes. You know, she could do it all. She could play all the instruments. Yeah. She made their costumes. Like Shayna was integral to Jim and the Holograms. She was. So I had to make a piece dedicated to her, and that's how a lot of my work for the clothing company comes about. Like I'll see something or something will be reminding me of something, and then I'll dedicate something to that. I try not to do a lot of character work because I feel like that's it's just something that a lot of people do. Yeah. And I kind of feel like it's not necessarily like a style thing. Right. That's a fashion thing. Like it's for sales. So I try not to do it unless it's like a tribute. Right. You know what I mean? Like I have a jacket that I just attributed to Tina Turner. Yes. Or like I've done a few pieces about Grace Jones because those are like people who are very impactful to me. Yes. So I want to tribute to them. But like if somebody's like, oh, can you do like a Minnie Mouse jacket? No, I'm not doing that. You know, and a lot of people like want me to do like kids stuff. Okay. And kids stuff is all about like doing characters, and I'm like, I'm just not interested in that.
Would you do something that? So, do you think some kids would be receptive to something that wasn't character focused?
Yeah. I feel like if you capture the essence of like what the child would want, or like the character of the child, like in a color story or something like that, then like I think kids initially are attracted to color and exciting shapes and things, and that's what gets them in tune to the cartoons where those things are featured.
Right.
So I think if that was an idea on the table, I would be very interested in that. Okay. But like just painting a Paw Patrol jacket, I'm not doing that. No. There are hundreds of people who will.
Exactly.
I'm not
doing it. Yeah. That's where the inspiration was coming from. Yeah. So when you work with people to do custom pieces, do they usually bring in the garment or do you buy them? Like, how does that work?
It's all situational.
Okay.
A lot of times it will be like they'll come to me and they'll because I keep a crazy inventory. So there's a closet at the end of the hallway right here. Yeah. It's to the brim with clothes. Wow. So, and I'm always, every time I go out to like the thrift store or whatever, I'm literally like shopping for the potential. Okay. So I'm looking at something like, ooh, this could be something really cool. Yes. And it's some pieces in there that are very wacky. Yeah. But I'm like, but I feel like this could be something, you know what I mean? So,
and is it something that you would present to a client, or are you just going to make the art on it yourself?
Oh yeah, I know. I present the piece to them first, and if they are local, then I'll say like, come and try it on, because that's what's really important. Yeah. So I'll say, come and try it on, or I'll like, if someone wants something made, like I recently had a friend who was going to see Beyonce in Philly, so I had him come over and try on like several different pieces before I worked on them, just to make sure like, okay, see if we would have just started with that wouldn't have fit or whatever. Right. So we'll do that part of it, find like what actually works, or like if they're not local, they'll just send me a piece. Like I've had people order things from Amazon and just ship it directly to me, and then we'll talk about concept. Right. Some people are just like, you do your thing. Okay. But then I have people who are like in bands and they're like, we want this lyric from one of our songs on the piece, or we want this idea worked into a part of the piece. Right. So like I did a jumpsuit for this guy who's in the Aztec Sun. And they had a poem that he wanted on the back, but then he had another piece that he wanted to like go up the leg. Okay. And I like when it's like they have input on it as well. Yeah. Because it gives me like, I like when there's input but not like restraint. Right. I like when it's like, I want these two things, but like you do your thing. Okay. Versus like, it needs to say this here. If it doesn't say this here, I want to say, you know, like, when it's too restrained, then I get lost in it and I can't really create like I want to. Right. You know what I mean? Right. And I was going to ask, in terms of someone asking you to just do your thing, how are you pulling them into it? Is it just from you talking to them and trying it on and then you feel? And I'll actually like study them for a little bit. So and I won't like mention that, but I'll like go through their Instagram, if they have a website, I'll spend some time on there being like, this person, what do they like? What are they talking about? What are the things that they're pulling from? Gotcha. Like there's this one client I have who I did a hat for her, and then she sent me a jumpsuit and wanted me to do a jumpsuit. So I was looking, I was like, okay, she really loves James Baldwin. So I was like, I'm gonna make sure I include lots of James Baldwin quotes and maybe like a line work drawing of his face and like these different things that I'm like, I know this will speak to her. Yeah. So I want to include those kind of things, and then I'll make sure that there's elements of like the staples that are vintage rivals, like what we're known for. Yes. I'll make sure that's in there as well, but like merge the two ideas. Got it. You know what I mean? Got it. And how do people usually find you? I'm at pop-ups all the time. Okay. Like I am every weekend. I try to at least do one every weekend, if not like, because there'll be some days where I'm doing like 2 or 3 in a day. Yeah. And I just believe in the DMV, all around the DMV? Okay. And honestly, anywhere I'm invited. Okay. So I believe in that visibility. Yes. You know what I mean? Yes. A lot of people are like, oh, well, do you have a store? And I'm like, that would be great for whatever community it would be in. Right. But I feel like the real reach of the brand is taking it to meet people where they are. And it's funny you say that, because when I interviewed Anika Hobbs with Vivian Human, she said the same thing. She had, of course, the brick and mortar. She has it in Baltimore now. She had it in DC. But she was like, you know, I thought it was just going to be, I'm here in this brick and mortar, these 2 stores. That's it. But then she was like, no, sometimes you got to go where people are. Which is exactly what you're saying. Yeah. You have to get that visibility. Exactly. Yeah. And it also creates an air of like urgency to the buy, because they're like, well, I love this, but I don't know when I'm going to see it again. Yes. If you're in a store, somebody can walk by that window every day, and one day I'm going to get that jacket. You know what I mean? True. And that day may never come. Yeah. But if they see it and they're like at a festival or something, and they're like, oh man, I don't know if I'm ever going to see this person again, then they're like, that means I got to get it now. And that changes the whole perspective. You know what I mean?
That's a very good point. Yeah. So talk about, you said the difference between fashion and style.
Oh yeah.
Talk about that.
That's like, that's such a big concept for me.
Yeah.
Because first of all, like I've always liked to dress fashionably. And a lot of people are like, oh, you should do a clothing line. And for a long time, I kind of took that as a slight, weirdly enough. Because to me, it translated to like, you're gay, right? Like that's how I used to receive it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and especially when it would come from certain people.
Okay.
So I'd be like, okay. And then I was like, well, it was like a rebellious part of me that was like, when people kept saying it, I'm like, okay, but don't tell me what to do. You know what I mean? And then it became like, when I would dress myself, and when I started to really like get into it, like painting my own clothes and deconstructing things and really like making a science of it, then people were like, you know, it turned from like, you should have a clothing company to like, where did you get that? And that's when I started to be like, I should have a clothing company. You know, so that's when I had to, we had to get there by other means. But so when it became that's when I was like, okay, people are paying attention to my style.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's not about what exactly I'm wearing, it's how I'm wearing it, how it looks on me. And that's what's, you know, speaking to them. And I always say that like style is your signature. It's what tells people what they need to know about you before they can even speak to you. You know what I mean?
That's what I talked to Caprice about. We talked about that. Yes, it speaks for you.
Exactly. It tells people, and you know, we would like to say that you don't want to make assumptions of people or things like that. But like the truth is, when you see someone and they're dressed a certain way, you put together in your mind what you feel you need to know. You know what I mean? Or like, it can help you decide your approach or whatever when you see how a person looks.
It's just what we do.
Exactly. And I always say, people always remember how you look, how you smell, and how you made them feel. Those are the three things so I always make sure in any situation, I'm keeping those three things in mind when I'm approaching people. But fashion is like, when I think of fashion, I think of the actual industry of fashion. So fashion as like jobs for people, fashion as a institution, and it has its place. You know what I mean? Like there are countless numbers of jobs and ritual and things built around the idea of fashion as an institution. And I think that it is important for people who are involved in the industry to be knowledgeable, to have all those things. But I don't think that fashion is the end all to, like, I don't think you can be involved in fashion or work in fashion and not have personal style or have an understanding of how style impacts fashion.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
And like people who work as stylists have to understand that like it's not about bringing fashion to people. It's about bringing style through the fashion. You know what I mean? Like,
I love that.
Finding who your client is and dressing them in a way where they're presenting fashion, but able to still present what is the brand or what's being sold. You know what I mean?
Yes, totally agree. Yeah. So you mentioned two style icons, Grace Jones and Tina Turner. How did they? Was it? Of course, it's probably not just their style, but how did they impact?
So I always tell people that if I had to like choose celebrity parents, Grace Jones would be my dad, and Whoopi Goldberg would be my mom.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that's a strange collaboration,
I kind of get it.
But you can see it,
I kind of
right?
get it. Yeah.
So Grace Jones was really. I remember being like a child. And watching. I forget the name of the show she was on, but she was being interviewed by, I believe his name was Graham something.
Oh,
not Graham Norton.
Not Graham Norton. Okay.
But Graham Edwards or something. It was a UK interview.
Okay.
But it was on TV, and I remember he had, for a second he was interviewing two people, and Grace was on this side of him, and there was a gentleman on this side, and at one point he turned his back to Grace to talk to the gentleman, and she became like irate, and she slapped him. Yeah, and then she slapped him and was like, "Don't ever turn your back to me." And I was like, in that moment, everyone in the audience was so like, "Oh," but I was like, you know what? I get it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like in that moment, it was like, don't invite me here. Don't have me. You know. And I was like, this is a person who I aspire to be like. Because now I'm not slapping people, but you know what I mean. It was
she's fearless.
It was something about her being there. Like anybody else would have just waited their turn. to come back. And she was like, no. I am me.
Right.
I'm here on the stage. Right. You will treat me as I want to be treated. Right. And I respected that so much. And she was just such an iconic character. She is. You know what I mean? And everything that she did, like before, you know, the Missy Elliott's and the people of that generation who had big ideas and contributed big ideas to music and fashion and everything. We had people like Grace who were turning it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And Whoopi Goldberg to me has just been such a staple because she's always found a way to have a thread through everything that brings you back to Whoopi Goldberg. So regardless of the character, the costume, whatever, you can still like get the same beats, the same delivery, the same, you know what I mean? Like,
very true.
And that's something I aspire to do with everything, when I'm hosting, when I'm dressing people, when I'm making things. I want there to be a thread that people will always be able to like come back to and say, Rich has something to do with this. You know what I mean?
That's a good point. I mean, you're definitely doing it.
Oh, thank you.
So with the clothing line, Vintage Rivals, you won recently, or you were awarded a fellowship.
Oh, yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
So the Briaxi Small Business Fellowship, they selected, there were hundreds and hundreds of applicants, and they selected 33 small businesses from Baltimore and 33 small businesses from Oakland.
Okay.
So there's two separate cohorts.
Nice.
And it's a 18-month fellowship where they just kind of pour into us with like resources, knowledge, and also they just create a space for us. So we did a 4-day intensive, which literally was intense.
Yeah.
Where we
and
had
that was
to
this year?
Yeah, it was in the beginning of from May to the end of May to the first week of June.
Okay.
And we literally had to meet. We were at the Reginald F. Lewis Museum.
Yep.
Every day from 9 until 5.
Wow.
So literally 8 hours a day, 4 days. And they really like put so many things in perspective for us. There were just so many conversations where they like just gave us tools and knowledge about things where it might be something that you struggle with in your business, but you don't have the words to put to it. Like the one thing that was very impactful for me was the conversations around relationships to money and like putting words to like the different phases you can be in at your various points of financial awareness. Yeah. So like a lot of times as an entrepreneur, I work from a space of scarcity where like I'm like, okay, we don't have a lot of money right now. Let's find a way to make some money. But that doesn't always pique our creativity because we're like, okay, we got to make things that sell versus make things that we love that will speak to people. Yeah. So like I had to change how I'm like working from that scarcity space and how to move out of that space without panicking or making choices that will I'll regret or change the impact of what I'm doing in a month or two from now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just like having a word to put to that was so like
it's empowering.
Yeah. I was like I remember that day leaving there being in my car like, whoa.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
And they helped you guys to think about that.
Yeah, just like they just gave us those tools.
Yeah.
And so we did the intensive, and also the intensive was great because it put all the people in the room together. So we got to not only like learn these things together, but then we would have like breakout sessions where we talk about it, and to hear other people who dream like me and you know express the similar thoughts or you know situations. It just was so empowering to be there with other people, and everyone there was black. All the businesses were black businesses, and I want to say maybe 40% were like black and queer owned businesses. So it was really like these are my people. You know what I mean? So it was, and we really it felt like summer camp. Because afterward we were like, "What y'all doing today? Let's hang out." You know what I mean?
It's great.
It was so great, actually. So I just did a presentation at the Newark Museum of Art.
I saw that. Yeah.
And one of the people from the fellowship, she had just called me we were just like kind of gossiping at first. And then I told her about that, and she was like, well, do you want me to, can I ride with you? And I was like, if you're serious, yes. And so, because I like, you know, most of the time when I'm doing stuff like this, I'm doing it by myself. And so she, you know, she came along for the ride. She was like just so supportive. Anything I needed, she was like assessing my needs the whole time. And then like for me, I'm always doing things like this, and I'm never capturing it. I was actually on a call a couple of days ago, and I was telling someone like all the things that come up. It was like, why aren't you like? I'm like, I'm only one person. I can't do it, and also like record it, you know.
Right.
And so she was like recording everything and like being right there, answering people's questions. I'm like, this is like, I was just so thankful for her.
Right.
You know what I mean in that moment, and that was made possible because of the fellowship.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I'm just so grateful. And it's like I said, it's 18 months. So now we do once a week virtually.
Okay.
We'll do like a crash class on every Wednesday.
Right.
And then that is at the end of the year, they're offering everyone in the fellowship a trip to South Africa.
Right. Yep.
And that, I mean, we do have to pay into that.
Right.
But what we're paying for is like, it's the deal of a lifetime.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I saw that.
Yeah.
On your
So
website.
they want us to pay. I'm trying to raise 5,000.
Right.
But they're asking for 3.
Okay.
And that includes. So it's like 14 days.
Nice.
The first leg of the trip is in Johannesburg.
Okay.
And we spend a good amount of time there. Housing, food,
everything.
Airfare, everything's included.
Right.
And then we spend the last leg of the tour in Cape Town.
Okay.
And that includes the airfare from Johannesburg to Cape Town and from Cape Town back to America.
Okay.
So everything is included in that, what they're charging us.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I have to, and I've known the people who run the organization. I've known them for a long time.
Right.
And ever since they met me, they're like, we have to get you to South Africa.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I feel like this needs to be the year.
Yeah. And you're gonna, you guys are gonna be with other small businesses over there?
So they have a base there because they're kind of like, I like to call them like global citizens.
Yeah.
They have a home in South Africa. They have a home in Baltimore. They have a home in Oakland. Like,
oh wow.
They are really real life nomads. They are a part of in every system where they live, they have a business, and you know what I mean. So they're very well connected.
Yes.
And like a part of us being there is also like them connecting us to the resources there.
Right.
So I'm like, this could be an opportunity to take the brand like globally. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I have to make this happen.
I'm sure it will. And that's another thing. I was at the Brooklyn Museum for Africa Fashion exhibit, and it's still going on. I think it's there through October. And I didn't know that when you finish the exhibit, there's a shopping experience, and it was curated by Alara Legos, which I didn't even know about them until one of the shirts that I bought, I posted on Instagram, and the designers were like, oh, I like this, and they reposted it.
Oh, nice.
And then in their repost, they said, find this shirt and some of my other stuff at Alara Legos shop at the Brooklyn Museum. And I was like, oh, so I looked up Alara, beautiful space in Legos, and they just curate. I mean, check it out if you have time. Go up there because they have everything from clothing, of course, to shoes, to like tees from Morocco.
I used to do when I had more time. Every Friday I would do like Fashion Friday on my Instagram story. Yeah. And I would do a different black designer from anywhere in the world. And there was so many that I would research that would come from South Africa. It was like crazy. Yeah, so I know that like they're really having almost like a revolutionary moment there as far as fashion is concerned.
Definitely.
And that's what I'm like, I would love to get on the floor while it's happening. You know what I mean?
It's so, I mean, across the continent, it's just like, I mean, it's already been there, but there are more platforms now that are accessible to us. Like Alara, there's Industry Africa, which is specifically online, exclusively online, but they have clothing and accessories from across the continent too. So this opportunity for you sounds like there's so much more that can come, and the global vintage rivals can be launched. Yeah.
So we're working towards raising the funds for that.
Yes.
And just I really said that this year was like the year I really wanted to like do everything, like all the things that I'm like, it would be nice to one day. Yeah. I want to make that day today.
Why this year?
I feel like you know how like when you want to start something and people are like, well, first you got to pay your due. Right. And for a long time, I would always be like, okay, well, I'm paying the due. Yeah. This is what it feels like to pay the due. Right. And it really got to a point where, like, here I am 10 years into doing something. I'm not, am I still paying the dues? You know what I'm saying? Like, it would be like, I would do some things that people would be like, why are you still doing this version of this? And I'm like, you know what? You're right. Why am I doing that?
Right.
And so this year I was like, no, I'm going to, like, write, I'm going to put it all down, put together some great press kits and whatever. And as I was, like, putting those things together, I'm like, I really have been, like, doing this for a long time. And, like, doing it well.
Right.
So I was like, so now I need to do it even better and do it even bigger. And I'm like, so this is the time and this is the year where I'm going to start operating in that space. No more of the, like, just taking the gigs because they're coming. Right. It's now got to be like, I need this caliber of gig or nothing. If that means I got to be hungry, that means that's what that means. But I have to, it's about, I got to elevate. You know what I mean? Right. So that's when I just literally, beginning of this year, I was like, this is it. This is how it's going to be. I would do some things that people would be like, why are you still doing this version of this? And I'm like, you know what? You're right. Why am I doing that? Right. And so this year I was like, no, I'm going to, like, write, I'm going to put it all down, put together some great press kits and whatever. And as I was, like, putting those things together, I'm like, I really have been, like, doing this for a long time. And, like, doing it well. Right. So I was like, so now I need to do it even better and do it even bigger. And I'm like, so this is the time and this is the year where I'm going to start operating in that space. No more of the, like, just taking the gigs because they're coming. Right. It's now got to be like, I need this caliber of gig or nothing. If that means I got to be hungry, that means that's what that means. But I have to, it's about, I got to elevate. You know what I mean? Right. So that's when I just literally, beginning of this year, I was like, this is it. This is how it's going to be.
And things seem to have changed because the fellowship, like you're getting
the fellowship came this year. I mean, literally, I want to say it was like the day that I said that to myself. Like the next day, I got a call. Someone was like, "We want you to design costumes for our play." So I had to make like 8 coats for a playhouse in DC, and then like it started happening, and I was like, and this is, so you got to have your conversations with yourself like that. You got to manifest in a way where it's like, I believe this for myself, so I'm gonna have it. You know what I mean?
I love it. In another interview I did with a woman that sells amazing eyeglasses, June Mines. You might know her, maybe not. But Black woman, and she said the same thing basically. Like you got to manifest your dreams, go after them, and things.
And manifesting in like a real way. Like yes, the writing it down in the notebook is cute and that stuff, but like you have to do the work.
Do the work.
You got to be like, no more of this. Only this. And you have to like, and the people around you have to be aware of that too. True. You know what I mean? Because like there are people who send me things all the time, and I'm like, this is cute, but like no,
because you're on a different you're on a different level.
So like you have to make it. And I tell people all the time, the best opportunities I've ever been given are the ones I've given myself. You know what I mean? Like when I wanted to be a part of an open mic, I could have went to all the open mics in the city and been like, let me host, let me just get on the mic. But then I was like, no, I'm going to make my own show. And I am going to host it. I love it. And you know what I mean? And then that showed people my skill. And then that turned into other gigs because I was like, but if I would have waited around for somebody to give me a chance all those years, and you know what I mean, I would still be waiting probably.
You gotta go for it.
Exactly.
And then you gotta, and when you're already doing, like you said, you have to elevate, move to the next level, and then the next level. Exactly. There's always more growth to happen. Love it. So talk about your quest to host Afropunk.
Okay, so
this is elevation.
And I guess by the time this comes out, it'll probably be okay to say. But so I'll start with how the campaign started. So I've been actively going to Afropunk. I think the first one I ever went to was maybe 2016, and it was just such a transformative experience. I mean, from every aspect of it, not just like being there in the field, but like everything about that trip like changed me. First, it started out me and one of my best friends, Lindsay, who her and I traveled together all the time. And so it started out just me and her. We were like, let's just go to this thing. And I've been seeing Afropunk like from the beginning when it was just in the alley and it was free. And and I kept saying like, I'm gonna go, but I would never go. And so finally me and her, we would just jump on buses and trains and just go places. So I said, let's just do this. And so we got an Airbnb, whatever. And then I had another friend, a newer friend at the time named Robert, who was like, well, I'll come. And I was like, all right, cool. And then he brought another friend, and it became this whole thing. So we went to New York, and I remember getting to the Airbnb and being like, what exactly, we don't know what this is going to be. We don't really know how to dress. We're just kind of like, we just were having all these conversations about like, what are we going to do when we get there? And I remember the first thing that happened when we got there, everybody split up. So like, we were just like, it was very Scooby-Doo. Like, Thelma, you go check out the basement, and Fred, you go, it was like everybody just dispersed. And I remember kind of like walking around there like by myself and being like, okay, even though I am like by myself, I don't feel like alone. Like I'm walking around with people and I'm like, okay, these people, it's an energy here that feels like I should be here. You know what I mean? And so I remember being there, and then like every act that I watched, there was just something so signature and special about the moment. Like I remember seeing Khalees, and she was pregnant, and it was her birthday.
What?
So like, not only was she there with this like, her belly, and she had this huge like country crop wig on. I mean, it was just, and she was wearing this like pink flowy caftan, so she was just like a vision. On stage. And I remember a legendary Damon, who's a very famous stylist, came out at the end of her set with a birthday cake on a cart, and we all sung happy birthday to her. Oh my gosh. And I just remember being like, this is so like, this is something I will never forget. You know what I mean? Wow. And then later on that night, not only were Grace Jones and Lauryn Hill both on the list, but they went one. So Grace Jones went. And Grace Jones, she started out in like this big like coat. By the end of her set, she was literally naked and just painted. And she, at one point, she climbed off of the stage onto the security guard's neck, and he walked her through the crowd while she was singing My Jamaican Man and like touching people. Like she was like the Pope blessing them. It was, I was literally like clawing, like touch me, please. I couldn't get into the front in time, but just like stuff like that where I'm like, okay, this could only happen here. This could only happen now. You know what I mean? And so I was like, after that, I was like, I was hooked. I was like, I have to be here every year. And just to kind of like grow with the festival, to see like, I remember seeing Janelle Monáe there. Very much in the black and white era of Janelle Monáe, and now seeing, and then moving up to like the Electric Lady era, where things were definitely different. And it's just so crazy. So I've been going, and I was like, I would love to, like, every year I would get a little closer to this or a little closer to that, and I'm like, I would love to one year host one of these stages. And I was like, again, why not make it this year? Why not? And I was like, something that could, and I had initially, when I had the thought, I was like, I'm gonna go see if I can find somebody's email and reach out and send out my press kit, and I did that. And I did all those things and nothing. So I was like, well, I got to get their attention another way. So I was like, I'm going to start a social media campaign. I just reached out to as many people as Instagram would allow me to. And I'm like, I want to, because I mean, one thing about Afrobunk is like, I've been featured on their page several times. So almost every time I go, like my outfit gets featured or something like that. So I'm like, if they don't, there's at least a record of a familiarity with me in this brand. So I'm like, we gotta realize this some kind of way. So I went back in the archives of their posts, and I found their first ever photo of me. And I was like, I want everyone to go on this picture and say like, Rich Rocket should host Afropop. You know what I mean? And people did it. We had over like 250 comments on that first post. And I was like, okay. But I didn't get really any reaction from Afropunk on that. So I said, all right, we'll take that. Now it's time for phase 2. So then I went on another post of me that they had featured from when I went to Afropunk in Atlanta. Did the same thing. I'm like, y'all, let's get active. Let's go. So we did it again. Same. I think we had maybe 300 comments this time. And this time they started liking people's comments, but still no direct contact from me to them. So then, when they finally posted the lineup, I was like, all right, y'all, instead of saying, let Rich Rocket host, this time just going to be like, but who's hosting? We're going to change the verbiage, but we're going to still have that impact. And so that was the time when they were like, okay. And they reached out and were like, we hear you. Let's let's start the conversation.
Wow.
So there has been a conversation that has been had.
Love it.
No ink is dried just yet.
Okay.
But there's a big chance that I will be hosting Afropunk.
Oh,
not just one day, but both days. So
wow.
Yeah. But again, we're gonna wait for the ink to dry.
Okay.
For it to be like official.
Okay.
But yeah.
That is amazing.
It's crazy.
And
it really made me feel like, again, like we were saying, like that manifesting and doing the work is like, it can happen. It can happen for anybody.
Yes.
You just have to do it.
You have to do it.
Yeah.
And be innovative and creative and do it. Because like you said, you did the traditional route.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta. It's more than one way to skin a cat, right?
Always.
Always.
And sometimes you get started skinning, you realize you don't need to skin. You just need to feed. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's like, oh well, I don't have to do that way, because a lot of times we'll see things happen for other people.
Yes.
And we're like, okay, well, they did it that way. Maybe I should try that same method.
True.
And I'm like, it's not always the same thing.
Yeah, Wow. Okay. So should I air that part?
You can. Well, I mean,
wait. I can take
because I definitely will know, like, in the next week or two.
Okay.
Because, like I said, they sent an agreement, but not the official agreement.
Okay.
But, like, the vendor ID forms, we've done all that stuff.
Got it.
So I'm just waiting for the actual, like, I already know the rate. We've done all that stuff.
Wow.
It's literally just the, like, official agreement where I sign and they sign, and then it's done. And the guy who is supposed to do it is was out of town when we started the conversation on Thursday.
Okay.
So he'll be back on Monday. So she said give him until like Thursday of next week, and then it'll be like official.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. By the time this comes out, it will.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like we'll be able to say it.
Yes. So I'll definitely wait to hear from you, and then I'll hear.
That part.
Because that's amazing.
It's crazy.
Oh my god.
And then I was talking to my best friend because we're working on our looks. We're going together and we're working on our looks together.
Yeah.
And so she was like, "Well, now this changes everything." And I'm like, "Yeah, it does. It really does. Yeah. Like the look has to be astronomical. At first, we always go for a look,
of course,
but now it has to be next level.
So what are you thinking? It's going to be something that you.
So I'm thinking, the first. So since it's 2 days, I was thinking the Saturday look would be something that because she's actually she's sewing. I don't know how to sew.
Okay.
So she'll be sewing it, but it is a design that I came up with.
Yes.
So, and it's gonna, of course, be sustainably sourced.
Yes.
It's actually gonna be like a presentation of sustainability.
Okay.
So it's this kind of like I don't want to call it like a wrap dress, but it's gonna be like a piece by piece, but not patchwork. Of different fabrics. But they'll be like tubed into like these kind of like strips that will go across my body, but they'll be dimensional. So it's not just like the strips. They'll be almost like tubing that form like a skirt kind of. Yeah, and then it'll be like an overcoat that'll go over just the shoulders. Yeah. That'll just be like strips of scrap fabric. Okay. That'll kind of look almost like a fur or something like that. That'll just cover like the shoulders and the arms. Okay. So that'll be the day one look. Yes. And then the day two look is just, I want to wear something painted, something that I painted. But I don't know how it's going to look just yet. Like the silhouette, the shape. Yes. I have to figure that part out. But it will be something that I have hand painted. Yeah.
Love it. Oh, that's great news.
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy. I can't wait.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. My last question was gonna be like, what's next? But that's clearly one of the things that's next. Yeah. South Africa,
dinner with designers in October.
Yes.
Which will be, because I used to produce a lot of events like here. But I want to say this is the only, I did dinner with designers in April.
Yeah. Okay.
So this will be the only other event I'll be doing in this area. Okay. This year.
Got it.
So dinner with designers, South Africa, Art Basel.
Yeah, Art Basel, right.
In December.
And you're presenting Art Basel?
Yeah, so we're working on a few different variations of the presentation. Okay. But there's a museum in, it's in like, the area is called like Overton.
In Miami?
Yeah. Okay. And it's a historically black police, not police museum. It's a historic. It's like a civil rights museum, if you will.
Okay.
And they want to work with me to do a presentation at their museum during Art Basel.
And that's with clothing. What is it?
Yes, with clothing.
Got it. Okay.
So it'll be about a big part of the museum's focus is about like justice and the policing of Black people, especially during like the civil rights era.
Yeah.
So we're kind of taking that idea and merging it with what I create, and we're doing a exhibit about policing bodies, but in the sense of like not just physically like policing of bodies by like law enforcement, but policing of bodies by like society standards, you know, idealism, all those kind of like bigger ideas around like how we see our bodies, how we present our bodies. We'll be doing a collection that will exhibit that.
Wow. Wow, that's nice. That's amazing.
Thank
you. How did you come to get that opportunity?
Well, my friend Terrence, who works at the museum, he was the one who like was encouraging the idea. So I actually met Terrence at a club randomly. He does all kinds of different things. Like he works with he does like set design for like the Real Housewives of Potomac.
Oh wow. Okay.
He does all kinds of different things. So I randomly met him at a club in DC one night, and I remember I had said something about like Art Basel just in the conversation. And he was like, okay. And I was like, okay. Like, I don't know what that means, but okay. And then that summer, I hosted Baltimore's Pride. Okay. And he was there. Yeah. And I remember walking back to the car, and he was like, I know you probably don't remember me, which at the time I didn't. Okay. But also, like, when I come off stage, or especially after like something that's a big social exchange, like hosting or something, I'll just be in like a fog. Yeah. And so when he was talking to me about the moment, I'm like, yeah, sure, but I had no idea. So, but then like literally by the time I got to my car, I was like, okay, no, I do remember him. Right. And he reached out and was like, let's talk about this for next year. Wow. And so we just been like kind of snowballing the conversation. And now I want to say maybe like 2 weeks ago was the first time we really were like, times, dates, you know, whatever, making it happen. Nice. So, and he was the leading force on the idea. Okay. And then I just kind of elaborated on the concept and how we can visualize it. So, yeah. And the museum has a like historic courtroom in the museum that's like literally a courtroom. Right. And we'll be doing the exhibit in the courtroom. Oh, wow. So it's going to be really That's going to be dope. Wow. Yeah, crazy. Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, you got so much going on, so much great stuff happening. Thank you. I'm thankful to have had the time to talk to you. Yeah, no, I appreciate you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the interview with Rich Rocket as much as I enjoyed filming it. If you're going to Afropunk, you're going to see him there both days. So enjoy and stay tuned to Color Coded Style for more interviews and more content coming soon.